My name is Madison Barra, and welcome to my podcast, where it's all about teaching you how to lose weight, keep it off, and actually enjoy the process. I've lost over 70 pounds, and these are the failures and lessons I've learned along the way. Hope you enjoy and subscribe. Today, I'm going to talk about your diet pattern. So there's some type of pattern and cycle repeating in the background subconsciously that you're not aware of. And we're going to break that down today. And you're going to know exactly kind of where you stand and what this pattern you always fall into as like a trap. So this is going to be really cool. So I want you to be interactive on this, and I want you to really, really follow these steps. So the reason I want to talk about this first and foremost is because, no one ever really loses weight on their first try, right? I haven't really met a lady who had these goals and tried once and never had to try again. I never run into someone like that. So we've had multiple attempts at getting healthy, losing weight, getting stronger, whatever it was. We've all had multiple attempts throughout our life of trying to reach a goal and not getting there. So there has to be some type of relation, right? So we are creatures of habits. As humans, we are creatures of habit. We like our coffee the same. We like to make sure we sleep the same in the same position every night with the same, wonky legs swished over here and crunched up here. And all of that. We eat foods the exact same way. We're even particular with the cutlery that we use, right? So we are creatures of habit. And if we're creatures of habit, that means there's habits happening that we aren't even aware of. And by bringing these habits to light, we can see where our flaws are. And we can also better predict and prepare for what life will throw at us during this journey. So when we look at it this way, which I'm going to go through in just a minute, we can now catch. We can catch where we are in our patterns. We can catch when we're about to get stuck again or about to repeat an unhealthy habit, and we don't have to finish the habit. We can learn how to kind of chop it up and rewrite it. Now, in terms of your diet pattern or your weight loss pattern, whatever you'd like to call it, there's kind of 6 steps that I've observed from myself and from the women that I've coached. And these 6 steps, they kind of always happen in sequence. And unfortunately, these 6 steps, this cycle of 6 steps, for most women, it happens multiple times a year. We go through the same 6-step cycle multiple times a year. So let's break down the 6 steps. And I want you to pinpoint exactly your nuances and your specifics for each step. Okay. So step number 1 is we get triggered. Okay. Something happens in your life that triggers us and makes us say, whoa, I got to change. Right? So whether it was somebody said a rude comment and it made you think or hurt your feelings. Maybe you tried on a pair of pants and they were starting to get snug and you're like, oh, gotta change. Maybe somebody took a picture of you and you finally looked at yourself for the first time in a long time and you didn't like it. So think for a second, what is your most common triggers that get you moving or make you feel more deeply that, I need to do something? What are those triggers? Did you have a scare at the doctor, right? What seems to be the reoccurring trigger every time that happens that inspires you to start a weight loss journey? Think back. Usually it's just 1 or 2 things that always kind of happens. Maybe you got a wedding coming up and you want to fit into a new dress, that too. So that's step number 1 of a weight loss journey. We get triggered. Now, step number 2 is now we've got motivation. So motivation is step number 2. So now we're like, okay, I'm ready. I got to do this. So what I want you to do is think about, what motivates you. So once you get triggered, what's the trigger that really makes you think? And what motivation does that trigger lead to? So what is your why most of the time? Why do you do this? Do I want to keep up with my grandkids? Do I want to look good in a bikini? What's your motivation? Do I want to not die early? Like, what always seems to be the thought? Do I just want to look hot? Like, there's no right or wrong motivation here, but you have to learn your actual motivation. So what is the thought that drives you after you've been triggered and before you take action? What's that? What are those things? I want to feel better. You know, I'm bloated and I need a nap in the day and I need to fix that. So what exactly is your motivation? Really think. The last times you've tried, what seems to be the reoccurring thought and driver in this journey, okay? That's step 2. Now, step three is the action phase. So now you've been triggered to make a change. You're motivated by something, and now you're going to take action into that motivation because of that trigger. And our actions tend to be the same. There's patterns within our patterns. So what is the action that you normally go for, right? So, you know, could it be, I'm going to start a diet. I'm going to, you know, re-sign up at a gym. I'm going to start walking more. Like, where does your brain automatically go when it's time to act on that motivation? What's the solution that your brain always comes up? What is it? Is it, let me Google a new program? Is it, let me call my old trainer? Is it, let me throw out the chips in my house? Like, what's the go-to action that gets the ball rolling? What is it? We all have one. It might be different, but it's always the same approach. So we got to label it, find the root of it, because they're very similar. You're only going to have 1 or 2 answers for each of these steps. So what is the action that you always take? Okay, that's step 3. Now, step 4 is, you know, we're on our action. We're trying, whether we're successful or not, but we are trying because we still have that motivation that's kickstarted in the beginning, and that trigger was still fresh. So we're in that pain. But then step 4 is an interruption. Something always happens. That is the one thing you can count on in life. There is change. So something happens where it either throws you off of your routine, or you struggle to continue your routine, or you lose the drive to continue your routine. So maybe you get sick and you have to stop working out. And then once you recover, then you don't want to work out anymore. Maybe, you know, it gets really busy at work and you have a deadline to hit. So you put everything on pause until the deadline's done. But then by the time the deadline comes around, you're now not inspired to start again. So what is your normal interruption? Is there family drama and it stresses you out and you put everybody else first before yourself? And then it gets interrupted and you're thrown off the habits that you were trying to build. So what is it in your diet pattern that interrupts you? You have to know this. You have to know that it has a 1-up on you. It has a 1-up on you right now. If you don't label it, it's going to keep happening and you're not even going to realize that it's the same thing throwing you off. What is it? Is it a person? Is it an emotion? Is it a thing? What is your common interruption? Okay, that would slow you down. Maybe not necessarily stop you, but would slow you down. Okay, so that's step 4. Now, step 5 is you get derailed. Okay, you know, maybe you struggled for a little bit to try and hold on. Maybe you did hold on after that interruption, but at some point we got derailed. We said, screw it, this is too much right now. I can't, or I don't want to, whatever the reason we are using, but we get derailed from what we were initially starting to do, that initial action. And at this point, that trigger was really far away. That motivation is dwindled. The action wasn't working usually. And that interruption was discouraging enough to make us not want to try anymore, or discouraging enough to not give us the push we need to continue. So now we're derailed. So we're going off the rails here. So whether it's just a little bit, like we're really screwing up, or maybe we're just getting half of what we said we would do done, something's happening and we're kind of in a sinking ship. And at this point, your mind is kind of like half in, half out. You're dipping your toe in your health journey, in your weight loss. And at this point, you also don't believe you're going to hit your goals, because maybe the interruption was a birthday party, and you had a piece of cake, and then the cake derailed you, and then you're like, well, then I'm gonna have a second piece of cake. And if I have cake, I might as well have the chips. And if I have the chips, well, I might as well have just had the burger anyway. And then that rolls over into the next day. And then, oh, well, maybe I'll just start the day with some pancakes and some sausages and some eggs. And then lunch, I'll go order out. And dinner, hey, let me call a friend. That's just an example. But this derailing happens. So you need to know, what does your derailing look like? Once you've been interrupted, does the derail happen immediately? Or how long do you fight the interruption till the derail wins? What does it look like? And how long does that normally take between the two? Think about it. Think about it. What's your derailing look like? Does it start with, oh, screw it, what's the point? Is it, I'll just start fresh tomorrow? Is it, I'll just start fresh Monday? Is it, I'll start after I get back from vacation? Is it, what's the point? It's not working anyway. Like, what's your derail look like? You have to know you, because it's been repeating multiple times. And if you're anything like me on my journey, I struggled for 15 years losing the weight. And I repeat this cycle about 5 to 6 times a year. So you do the math, 5 times 15. And every single time, you know, just because the action was different, my derail was still the same. So you got to really be paying attention and dive deep here. What's your derail look like? So that's step number 5 here of this diet pattern. Now, the 6th step is repetition. So once we've been derailed, whatever that process looks like, and whatever mental state we are now in, whether we are completely disappointed and upset and annoyed or angry or mad at ourselves for doing it, or we're sad that we couldn't keep going and we'll never reach our goals, or we're happy and we've convinced ourselves we don't really want our goal anyway, so I'm happy this happened. Whatever state, pay attention, whatever state you're in after your derail, then we'll kind of determine the next step of repetition. So repetition, it just means, guess what? You go right back to step number 1. You wait until you get triggered again. Now, here's the problem with this cycle. This pattern in and of itself is not a bad pattern. It's kind of just human nature, and it's kind of just life, the roller coaster of life, going through these steps. However, the problem becomes when you have an increased amount of time between derailing and being triggered again. Guess what normally happens? First of all, if you had any results in the first pattern, you've now lost it because you waited so long, you've lost it. So now you start from scratch. And secondly, you get further and further away from your goal, because the goal is not follow a program. The goal is change your lifestyle. So you can't stop and go back to the old you. You can't just stop being healthy. You can't just put exercise on hold or meal prepping on hold. That's not how this works. You need a full lifestyle change. And the future you, who's got all her shit figured out and has reached her goal, she looks different, and her life looks different day to day, week to week, month to month. Her life looks different. So your job going forward, now that you know the 6 steps, and now that you know your specifics of the 6 steps, you can now pinpoint where you are in the cycle. You can then predict what step is going to happen next, and therefore you can prepare for what you're about to go into. And then your only job is to shorten the time between step 6 to step 1, from repeating to being triggered again. That's all that it is. From the point when you derail to the point that you get triggered again, you have to shorten it, because that is what compounds results, right? Because maybe you only lost 5 pounds the first cycle, and then you fell off and you gained the 5 pounds back. But if you shortened that derail by just half of what it was, then maybe you would have only gained 2.5 pounds back. And so overall, you're still 2.5 pounds down. And then if we repeat that better pattern in a year, instead of going 5 pounds off, 5 pounds on, 5 pounds off, 5 pounds on, and then, January 1st and December 31st, we're on the same page, same place we started the year, we're ending the year. Well, then this way we can now be like, oh no, you know what? I just lost 10 pounds in a year and it wasn't that hard. I still slipped up. I still messed up, but it wasn't that I was trying to not mess up. It was that I was trying to shorten my cycle, shorten that pattern. And that's where your mind should be going right now. How can I shorten my pattern? Well, first step is knowing that it's there in the first place. Second step is knowing that you are falling into a pattern that looks the same every time. Might have a few details that are different, but you always are reacting and responding and approaching it the exact same way. So if we're going to do that again, because we're creatures of habits, then what can we do? What's the easiest place to tackle and the simplest place to tackle? Well, you better speed up when derail to when you're triggered again. And if you know your trigger, which you should by now, because we talked through it. If you know what your exact trigger is, then you can go find that trigger. When you get derailed, then you're like, oh crap, it's not working again, I should stop. The first thought is, oh, what's my trigger? Let me go find it this time, instead of waiting for it to come to you. And now you're cheating the pattern. Look at that. There's your cheat code. Because life is all about patterns. Like life is patterns, but you don't recognize the patterns when you are in them, when you're a part of them. Those are the patterns we don't recognize. So I want you to take this knowledge today and I want you to really sit with it. And I want you to map out what your 6-step cycle looks like. What triggers you? What motivates you to take action? What action do you always seem to go for first? What always throws you off in that interruption? And then how do you handle your derail? And how long does that derail normally last, right? If, let's say the action lasts 3 weeks before getting an interruption, and then the derail lasts 3 months. Well, that's not a very good ratio, but that's normally how it goes, right? We spend more time off of our plan than we do on our plan if we look at a year as a whole, right? So if we change the ratio just by 1 extra day, that compounds. And that's what I want. I want compounding interest on your weight loss this year in your cycles. So you should be going through these cycles faster. So there should be more cycles in a year now, more patterns in a year, but they're more productive and you haven't backtracked, right? So like I was saying before, if I had 5 cycles in a year where I would lose 20 pounds, gain 30 back, lose 10 pounds, gain 5, like that's kind of how my cycles would go. I'd lose weight and usually would gain more back because my time was so long between restarting the cycle that it canceled each other out. But now if it's shorter, you're going to go through these cycles more often and you're going to watch your weight accelerate. You're going to watch any of your goals, any of your progress will accelerate if you can make it through and start the cycle again. And you have full control to start that cycle once you understand what your triggers are and what your motivation is and where you are in your mental state. It's very, very cool. Very, very powerful. So use this, okay? Use this to recognize what your diet pattern is, where you are right now, and how you can make sure it doesn't repeat itself again the same way it did last time. That is my challenge to you. All right, ladies. Take it, run with it. I will post this to the Facebook group too if you want to go back and just rewatch me explaining the steps so you can go more in detail and actually map out yours where you are. I would definitely strongly recommend that. And it'll give you some light on who you are, right? It's not like, and you'll have more control over the external sources that happen to you on this journey that you can't control, right? When you know what triggers you, oh, like me looking at a picture of myself really makes me unhappy and lights a fire under my butt, right? Or, having my husband say, hey, honey, you're looking a little unhealthy. Like maybe that lights a fire under your butt. Right? Find out what really makes you uncomfortable and triggers that intense emotion. And then you know what to look for when you're derailed. Or you can even skip the derail step and look for that trigger in the interruption step. When you're just starting to fall off track and wobble a little bit and not be able to be perfect and fall off routine, Then you can be like, oh, I know where I am right now in my cycle. Let me skip derail. Let me go back to my trigger. It'll spark that fire again. Then that fire leads to motivation. That motivation will lead you to that action, which will be a new action or the same action you were just doing because they're so close. And the ball keeps rolling. The ball never stops that way.
If you found this podcast valuable, I hope you leave us a 5-star review. And if you want to learn more about the Fit Queen way of weight loss, visit www.fitqueen.com. Thank you for listening, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss another episode.